Hello and welcome to another edition of the Cyclone Insider Show. He's Eugene Rapay. I am Travis Hines. Both of us work for the Des Moines Register. Thanks for tuning in on this Thursday morning. We've got lots to talk about. It is overlap season, like unofficially. We don't have basketball games yet, but men's basketball held their media day yesterday. Women's basketball next week. We've got some women's basketball polls and awards coming out today. We are officially in, I guess it's overlap season, right? Like, I guess unofficially, like for you and me, we're in overlap season. For everybody watching and listening, it's still just football season.
I would say it's already overlap season. I mean, we got the two exhibitions coming up too, and we'll be treating them like they're normal games in terms of coverage. And I'm sure some basketball fans who are excited will be looking at those games too with some intrigue and interest. So I think we're there.
All right, we got plenty of basketball to talk about, but first we're going to talk about the football Cyclones coming off last week's loss to Cincinnati. They've got Colorado this weekend, 2:30 Central out in Boulder. I will be there covering Iowa State's second of two back-to-back road games. Eugene will be back in Des Moines holding things down. But I think before we talk about Colorado, Eugene, I think we got to talk a little bit more about what went wrong defensively for Iowa State against the Bearcats and what they're going to do about it. Because as we talked about on Saturday night or whenever that was, it was bad. It was bad. I went and rewatched the game on Monday, and it was somehow worse than I recalled watching it live. They were walking Bacon up as the weak side linebacker there, and that just seemed to totally disrupt what they were trying to do, or totally played into Cincinnati's hands with that zone read, being able to get those weak side cutbacks, and the holes were massive. Safeties were overrunning gaps. Linebackers were overrunning gaps. Looked like they mostly went back to their base defense in the second half, and things got better. Although I'm a little skeptical that things were just fixed, because the second half got really weird where Cincinnati opens the second half with a gift fumble. Like Iowa State had nothing to do with their running back dropping a pitch. And then things got weird from there where Iowa State's offense was able to move the ball a little bit more, keep Cincinnati off the field, keep Iowa State's defense fresh, where Cincinnati barely played any offense in the second half. And when they finally kind of, put their foot back on the gas and tried to get aggressive, 80 yards the other way for a touchdown. So it was an improvement certainly for Iowa State in the second half, but I think the assignment was different, right? For what Cincinnati was trying to accomplish, that I'm not ready to say, okay, all is fixed, all is well, because Colorado was looking at that and salivating. And again, is it as easy as the scheme, as the alignment? I mean, usually not, but maybe. But I think it's probably fair and smart to treat that second half with, I don't know about skepticism, but let's see if it continues into the next half of football.
Yeah, the way I look at it is, was it an improvement in the terms of they gave up fewer points, they gave up way fewer yards? Yes, but I also agree that the jury's still out in a way. I don't think that just looking at that, I mean, aside from the gifted fumble, you had Cincinnati completing big plays that were called back for penalties, and that would have been huge momentum boosters. And then I felt like when Cincinnati, like you said, when they finally did get aggressive and they got a sort of boom over the top, and then they go pull away with a big touchdown for an insurance score. So while there were some promising signs, I can't say it's all fixed, it's all good now. I know that Matt Campbell and the team will say that it was much better, but we still haven't really seen enough. I think Cincinnati only played 15 or 17 offensive snaps in that second half. So a lot less of a sample size compared to that first half where Cincinnati was just firing at will, whatever it wanted, on the ground, in the air, it was going, it was chugging. The alignment, like you said, they went back to their base defense in the second half after kind of spacing everyone out. The safeties and the linebackers are out back a little more wider, maybe in anticipation to help out or give a little more cushioning to those new cornerbacks. In the second half, it seemed like that they trusted them a little bit more. I think Quinn Taylor Jr. was okay in his role, and Trey Bell too. But I would have to see how this Saturday will be a bigger indicator of what the defense actually looks like.
Yeah, and I think too, like I wrote it, and you and I talked about it after the game on Saturday. Like, hey, you can't blame the corners for giving up a trillion yards, and then rewatching it, you kind of can. Like, they were not very good. Like Cincinnati was attacking the outside, and Trey Bell and Quentin Taylor Jr. I think got eaten up a lot, and I think some of that is like John Tez and Jeremiah are really good tacklers, and they're really good at getting off blocks. To where, like, I don't think. Like the major problem for Iowa State were the gaping holes that the Cincinnati offensive line was able to create. But a secondary problem is when they did get to the edge, the corners were usually not there to help out in run support in the way that they otherwise would have been, I think, if those two starters were there. But again, that's an ancillary issue to what the defensive line and the linebackers allowed to happen up front. And I think the other thing to remember too, the corners played really well. Like Trey Bell gave up the one pass on the sideline that is, you just couldn't really defend it much better than he did. Like great throw, great catch. You deal with that. I will say though, like Brendan Sorsby was not very good throwing the ball on Saturday. Like he had some nice moments, but holy cow, did he miss some wide open guys for huge yardage that like when they get down the line, like when we're in November and that's Sam Levitt, or Jalen Daniels at Kansas, like are those the guys that can beat this Iowa State defense more consistently through the air, like or at least challenge those corners in a way that I think Sorsby was unable to. And like again, you got to give Iowa State credit for doing what it did. And like part of the deal is that quarterbacks are going to miss throws, right? You have to bake that into your defensive thought that you're going to allow some things and hope they sometimes just miss throws, but I just think like there's so much unknown with this defense right now into a level that is like weird for a John Haycock defense. Because usually you have, even when they don't play well, they play so much better in the second half that it's like, oh, okay, like you can figure this out. But I still think the first half was so bad. And then the second half, I think, was circumstantial to a degree where it's hard to draw a lot of conclusions that I think we really go into Saturday wondering about this and like, John Tez Williams and Jeremiah Cooper aren't coming back. Like, what are they going to get from like Willich? Like, having a couple nice moments on Saturday, but that's not what that game's going to be remembered for. Like, it's going to be remembered for that truck stick, for overrunning, for gaps. And he wasn't alone there. Like, Klosterman got beat on one of those seam routes that we've seen. Like, we saw Bo Goodwin get beat in. I think in the Iowa game that teams are trying to isolate that third linebacker. Both in the run game and in the pass game, that like they need better play, more consistent play there. And like it wasn't like Bacon and Ebel were great either. And like Dom Orange was a non-factor, Ezeagu was a non-factor, like Jace Gilbert was basically a non-factor. I mean, like there's like a lot of blame to go around there that I don't think like being able to steady the ship in the second half for those circumstantial variables that we talked about, like I don't think that alleviates. For me, if I'm Iowa State or an Iowa State fan, that doesn't alleviate any fear going into Saturday.
Yeah, there wasn't a specific position group that I could say, wow, at least they played well today. You look at the
Marcus Neal mispracticed tackles that he usually makes. Like, it wasn't good.
Exactly. Like, it was 20-plus broken tackles. They lost count after 20. I mean, I wouldn't want to know the final number, too, because that was not a great performance across the board. And now that's 2 games. You look at the Arkansas State game. The tackling also wasn't clean in that one. Now you have this game off of Cincinnati. Things like that, like things that you would expect for a team that talks about fundamentals and just even your A players, like we're missing tackles. Just disappointing across the board. And I hope that, or I would like to see if, can they iron down the tackling on Saturday against Colorado? Will they get back on track in that sense? But then also the alignment. How do they come out? Are they still going to help the corners a little bit more? Are they going to go back to their base defense like they did in the second half? We're going to have to see.
Yeah, and I think like the other part here is like the injuries are starting. They're not quite to where they were last year, where it was like, panic button time, like 5-alarm fire. But like you can see it down the road. Like Carson Hansen is questionable. Like given the way that he didn't come out of the locker room in the second half. Campbell didn't sound super optimistic about him playing when we talked to him on Tuesday. Like that seemed like if I had to bet, I'd guess that he wouldn't play or would be limited. Kyle Conrarty is still gone. Presumably, he showed up as doubtful on the availability report yesterday. And unless I'm wrong, Campbell straight up said he was not going to play on Tuesday, right? Like, he is not available Saturday.
Yeah, he said that at a minimum, it wouldn't be until after the bye week.
So, take that. We're all trying to figure out exactly how to make the public statements and the availability reports line up here, because they're only a few weeks old. So we'll see what that means. But I guess you have to presume no Conrarty, which we saw the decision making that affected on Saturday in Cincinnati, where they left anywhere between 9 and 12 points on the board because of the kicking situation. So I got asked about it it is on KXNO when I was talking with our buddies there on Wednesday, and the injury situation to me is not yet a panic mode, but man, you can see it,
the water.
I am starting to be concerned about it if I'm Iowa State. And we didn't even talk about Rocco Beck almost losing his head. Being in the med tent 2 weeks in a row, that is to me very concerning, because once that stuff starts happening, it's very hard to arrest it, right? Unless they're going to really stop running Rocco, only have 6 and 7 man protection, he's probably going to continue to take the same level of hits, right? It seems unlikely to change. What would be the change there if not something that Iowa State does?
Interesting too was I don't know if you noticed that, but in the Cincinnati game they rolled out Alex Mansky for one play to take a QB sweep, and I was like, is this what it's going to be like? And then they never did it for the rest of the game.
Well, I wrote about it whatever day ago. I think they might have, but then you look up and you're down 17-0, and you're getting
can't do
it. You're not running the backup quarterback package anymore when you're down 17-0, right? So they didn't really have an option there. And then I do think that they worry about not having Rocco as a runner, not having him as a scrambler. And I think that's a valid concern for what they're trying to accomplish offensively. But I'll tell you what is a bigger concern is that it'd be Alex Mansky running the offense instead of Rocco Beck, right? Which is not a slight on Alex Mansky. It's about what you lose when you lose Rocco Beck, if you were to lose Rocco Beck.
You'd rather have your grizzled veteran than Alex Mansky getting thrown into possibly his 3rd or 4th career appearance.
Yeah, and the wide receivers weren't great again on Saturday. Chase Sowell had an injury scare. Again, I will say 2 things. One, it feels like things are moving in a slowly in the wrong direction for Iowa State. They can arrest it, but it does feel like things are slowly moving. The trajectory has changed a little bit, which of course is probably a little bit of an overreaction to a loss. But I will say too, every time you feel like Campbell's team is reaching for rock bottom or is headed even further down, into the hole because things are going badly, that's usually seems to be the time where they figure it out and go and pick themselves back up and go the other way. So I would not be remotely surprised to see a motivated, disciplined, locked in team on Saturday. But and then we didn't even talk about the penalties. They had 3 penalties in the first half, I believe, of illegal shift, illegal substitution, and then an illegal formation where it's guys, those are the things that you usually don't do at all, and you're doing it in heaps. So it's, again, there are concerning issues here for Iowa State, I think. Not, again, that these aren't fatal flaws. They're things that can be fixed. But you don't like to see these things popping up in the middle of October.
Yeah, penalties were a good call. I just felt like there were a lot of uncharacteristic things that happened on both sides of the ball. I do think that just given Campbell's emphasis on not turning one loss into 2, into 3, into 4, into snowballing, I do feel like Saturday will be a bounce-back game. I think Colorado is also a very winnable opponent. But after the bye week, when things start to heat up and the schedule ramps up and it gets a little more challenging there, a little tougher teams, tougher quarterbacks, then that's when I'll be intrigued to see how Iowa State responds to that. But I do feel like Saturday will be a bounce-back effort from them.
Yeah, and I think it's a little under-discussed. We've talked about the run defense. We've talked about that defensive line. But, what are they giving you? They just gave up however many yards to Cincinnati. There is 0 pass rush. Dom Orange does not have a tackle for loss this season, which is wild to me. Like I know that he is getting like a magnet for double teams, like true, but you'd think like with the talent and size and strength that he has, like you split one of those double teams and you tackle a running back for a 2-yard loss, like one time in 60 games. Like they need more from him, which maybe is unfair, but it's like you and I were talking about, I think offline, like who's the playmaker on this defense? Like who is the guy that can go shift the tide of a game, that can take you from heading in the wrong direction to suddenly flipping the game and throwing momentum and field position, or, God forbid, a defensive touchdown for them. Like, who are those guys? Like, we've seen them at Iowa State at like literally every position group under Matt Campbell. And without Jontez Williams or Jeremiah Cooper, like, who are those guys? Like, I think your best bet is Marcus Neal, but like, that's like because he tackles well and hits hard. He's not a ball hawk. I think he's probably, not at the level of a Bo Freeler yet in terms of being able to go crazy, or to be everywhere all over the field. And I that is an under-discussed part here too. Like, you're getting absolutely nothing from your defensive line, at least last week, and you don't have that guy that can completely change momentum one way or another. At least you don't have it through 6 games.
Yeah, and I felt like that Cincinnati game just kind of, I don't want to say exposed, but it really highlighted that problem. Like, when things are going tough, who's that guy you fear if you're on the opposing offense? Who's that guy that can change the tide, whether it's a big hit or a created turnover? And right now, it felt like everyone made a couple of mistakes in that Cincy game. Who is the X factor? Who is the playmaker on defense with those 2 marquee guys out?
And I think, like, to even zoom out more, like, are we just seeing what we've kind of questioned going all the way back to the preseason, not really knowing what this team's ceiling is? Like, thinking it has a pretty high floor, but what's the ceiling? The ceiling doesn't feel like super high right now. It feels like this can be a consistently above average team, but can they be like more than that? Like, you look at Texas Tech, like, you can see the ceiling there is significantly higher, in my opinion, than Iowa State, which it's not always about your ceiling. It's how high can you consistently play. And I'm wondering, like, is that lower than we thought for Iowa State, where they can be consistently good and above average, but we haven't really seen them jump up to great. They were super, like that Arizona game, well-rounded, well-played, well-executed, but it wasn't like overwhelming football. Like, we haven't seen that from Iowa State really. And I'm wondering, like, does that speak to a ceiling that, is a level of play that is probably not high enough to win, or at least even get to the Big 12 championship game? I think that's a question right now. Like, unless we see a ceiling here, have we already seen it, I guess?
I think it also stinks that for Iowa State, you lose your 2 marquee quarterbacks at that time, and I feel like those 2 injuries alone drastically impacted the ceiling. Rocco Beck getting his head taken off. If it happens a couple more times, then the ceiling just crashes down. So I think this will be another year where the injuries impact things, which are part of the game. But for me, once Williams and Cooper went down, that ceiling shrunk a lot.
Yeah, and like, you haven't gotten consistent play from Chase Sowell. Like, he's had moments to, like, that guy could be part of an increased ceiling at wide receiver, and maybe it comes this weekend. At a place that kicked him to the curb after he started his career there. But like, the tight ends were really quiet on Saturday. Taylor Mauser said that Cincinnati was really able to take them away. I think like Abu Sama was probably like, was that your silver lining? Like, he played probably his best game of the year. We've seen that he has game-changing ability with his ability to hit big plays. So maybe that's where it comes from. But, and again, like, this is probably to one degree an overreaction to a poor performance and a loss. But I think it does dredge up a lot of the flaws or the questions that this team has. And again, like, you don't have to have all those answered in the first week of October, but you want to be trending towards that, right?
Yeah, no, and that's why I think that this Saturday game will be a big indicator. I think it'll be a true test, not only to see how they respond to it, but, can they fix some of those problems? A lot of those problems came all out at once, which was very fortunate for Iowa State. And it is only 1 loss, but, 1 can easily become 2 and 3. So we'll see how it is from there.
And like, I have a hard time projecting what they're going to see from Colorado this weekend too. Like I think they're 2-3, 0-3 in the Big 12, but the analytics really like them as a middle tier type team, not as a seller in the Big 12. Deion Sanders had a 4-hour long procedure. It sounded like he intimated a blood clot issue, which has been a consistent issue for him. Like that guy has really been through it health wise. Like really difficult time for Deion Sanders here the last couple of years for his health. What effect does that have on the field on Saturday? I don't know. You can see it going, where the team is mentally drained, or you could see it where they come out, running like Ralph the Bison out of the field there, ready to gore the opponents. So it's just a weird setup for this game. And I was listening to our buddy Chris Williams yesterday, I think, saying like 90% of the money is on Colorado on the betting line here. So like the pros are moving to Colorado, who I think was a 1.5 point underdog last I looked. So weird situation here for Iowa State. And man, like you don't want to go into that bye week having lost 2 games and, basically having zero margin for error to get to the Big 12 title game, and maybe even negative margin for error where you could win out and still not get in. Just, it's a pivotal game for Iowa State. Like if they can get in, win this game, get into the bye week, I think you feel, at least like you got a fighting chance to do it yourself. You lose this game, and man, that's a long 14 days between games, and with one of your biggest goals in, mortal jeopardy.
And Colorado, too, I don't think they'll be a slouch by any means. They've had 14-0 leads against BYU and TCU in back-to-back weeks, and they just end up blowing them with a turnover issues, and they end up losing both of those games. And with Colorado being at home, it'll be a tough one, but I do think that Iowa State should win it.
This is the Cyclone Insider Show from the Des Moines Register. I'm Travis Hines. He's Eugene Rapay. Iowa State football at Colorado, Saturday, 2:30 Central. I will be out there. Eugene and I were both at Hilton Coliseum yesterday for the Iowa State men's basketball team's annual media day. I thought, like, for a media day and a press conference where there wasn't a lot of hard news, I do think there was a lot of interesting things said and markers laid down both by TJ Otzelberger, the head coach, and the players. Like I came out thinking like this team, kind of similar to football of like, we've had a pretty good idea of its floor. The question is the ceiling. And it sounds like the early results from fall would have me more on the optimistic side. Full disclosure, this is talking season, so none of this stuff actually matters. But TJ, in my experience, is a guy that very much under promises and over delivers in most situations. So if he's, I think, talking the way that he was talking on Wednesday, that they think they got a chance to do pretty good.
Yeah, there's so many different things that stood out just looking at the team overall. I mean, when you have that core group of starting returners with Taman Lipsey, Milan Momcilovic, Joshua Jefferson, that's already the recipe for a top 25 team. But now you factor in these promising freshmen that they're high on, like Jamarian Bateman and Killian Toure. Dom Plato might play his way a little bit into the front court there. And then, of course, the transfers, Blake Buchanan adding some athleticism and some skill at the center position to complement Jefferson and some of the new guys that they brought in, like Eric Mulder. And so just the pieces there, the newcomers, if they can just work those in, it could be a lot better than top 25. I don't know how high in this gauntlet of a Big 12, and especially you look at that February, that second half conference play. We'll see how that all translates, but there are tools here, there are pieces here, and if they put it together, it could be another promising big year for Iowa State.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting because I think they're going to look different than they did last year. I think defensively, they're going to look a lot more like TJ's early teams, where he talked about it. He felt like this team has speed that the last 2 years they maybe didn't have on the perimeter. And I think that's what they would prefer. I mean, I think that they sat back more and were less aggressive defensively for a number of reasons last year. And I think they would prefer to really, and we've heard TJ say this now for 5 years, bring the fight to that offense in a way that they didn't last year. I think you're going to see more of that, where that pressure really extends out to half court. they're always going to say, yeah, we're going to integrate some full court stuff in here, but I'll believe that when I see it. But I do think like they'll have guys out there trapping, and like the centers that you mentioned, these are not like the Deshaun Jackson, Robert Jones, Brant Chatfield mold of guys. Like these are faster, athletic, quicker laterally type players that I think will allow them to extend out, to trap, to recover, to hedge, to do all the things that have made Iowa State's defense the most disruptive over the last 5 years. And so I think like that is something to watch. Offensively, it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I think like assuming Lipsey's healthy, and we'll talk about that here in a second, it's going to be obviously way different than last year because you had, a guy like Keyshawn Gilbert who was playing downhill all the time. You had Curtis Jones who could, go Johnny Flame at any moment. And, Joshua Jefferson and Milan Momcilovic were all there. But the offense was really about those two guards, right? Like it was Keyshawn and it was Kurt. And like they had lots of interesting options elsewhere with Milan and Joshua specifically, but those were secondary options. Those are not going to be secondary options. I think they are going to run a ton through Joshua Jefferson. And I don't know, I think they'd like it to look like it looked like 10 years ago when George Niang was there. And again, I hesitate very, very much to compare Joshua Jefferson to George Niang, but I do think he has a skill set that would allow them to use him similarly in that you get him in those screens, you get the ball to him at the block, you get the ball to him at the nail, and he can face up and scan and then go to work. And him going to work is similar to George in that he can score and he can pass. Like I've been saying this now for over a year that Joshua Jefferson is an awesome passer. And like that is his superpower more than anything else. I think like he is an elite big man passer. And so you run stuff through him. I think that opens up a lot of things. And I heard it from multiple people yesterday that Joshua Jefferson, Milan Momcilovic 2-man game, that combo has been dynamite so far this fall. That like if the defense helps off, even if it's not off Milan, if they help off, one of the other perimeter guys, Joshua can get it out, skip the ball to Milan who is open, or you get those two in a 2-man game, and it has been lights out for both of those guys. So to me, that was maybe the most optimistic thing that I heard yesterday, that like those two are right now operating at a really high level together.
It's a 10v1 NBA Jam or College Slam, whatever it may be.
If Jefferson could up his 3-point rating a little bit.
But one other big takeaway for me, in addition to Joshua Jefferson, who, by the way, leaned out a lot this offseason. When you guys see him this winter, this fall, or even in the Creighton exhibition game, this guy looks like he dropped or shed or leaned out at least 20 pounds, looks more agile.
20 pounds, he says.
I'm guessing. I don't know how much he dropped, but he looked way more agile. Should be much better conditioning. They'll probably run this guy so much. Maybe some point forward. We'll see. But Nate Heisey was another big name that was just, of all the talk for the returning guys, obviously that trio of starters deserve their flowers. But then Nate Heisey, if he can be the guy that they thought he would be coming out of Northern Iowa, that could raise the ceiling a lot. That can help really raise Iowa State's potential. And we're at a point now where not only is Nate Heisey playing well after a very lackluster summer where it sounded like TJ Otzelberger got on him a little bit for coasting. Nate Heisey wasn't afraid to admit that he was coasting. But now, ever since that they've gotten to work in the preseason, it's to the point where Nate Heisey is now a candidate for captaincy. It's like, whoa, where's Nate Heisey? Where was this last year? What kind of work has he put in? And now it's at the point where TJ is complimentary in that he's been leading the team in winning habits, and what he's shown so far all around since getting back to work in September has been very impressive. So that'll be something to watch too.
You were sitting by me during the press conference yesterday, so I have to ask you, when TJ was talking about how Nate Heisey had the best fall of anyone on the team, that he couldn't get him off the floor, that he'd been great. Like, was my jaw on the floor?
Because it was on the floor. It needed help getting it off the ground.
because like I cannot overstate enough, I don't think, like how frustrated I think both the staff and Nate probably this summer were, the frustration level of how the summer went for Heisey. Like they were not happy with how that went. And I think there's a lot of reasons for that. You know, you talked to Nate more than I did yesterday, and I think you said that he admitted to being, you know, quote unquote lazy over the summer. And I do like when you and I were talking about it, like it very much reminded me of, you know, I think what we've heard Matt Campbell say about that 2021 team is that when you got a bunch of 6th-year guys that have gone through summer, that have gone through all this before, like it can feel tiresome and tedious to where you're not giving your best. And that doesn't make it right or okay, but it does explain the situation, I think, a little bit. And you got to give Heisey and the staff a lot of credit for pulling out of that. Because, like, if we know anything about TJ Otzelberger's Iowa State men's basketball program, I think it's 2 things. You have to give maximum effort every single day. And if you don't, and you become a problem, you know, good luck to you. You're going to be off the team. You're going to, you know, be rehabbing back home while they're off at the NCAA tournament. Like it's like there's not a lot of patience there when things go sideways, you know, in ways where guys are not giving either max effort or they're just not, you know, helping them move in the right direction every single day. And like, again, I cannot, like, I was flabbergasted to hear the way TJ was talking about Nate Heisey because it's the opposite of the vibe coming out of the Suka basketball complex after the summer. And like on top of all that, like it's huge if Nate Heisey is good for them and is consistent for them. Because now you're talking about a starting lineup of senior Tamin Lipsey, 6-year senior Nate Heisey, 3rd-year junior in Milan Momcilovic, 5th-year senior in Joshua Jefferson, and then what's Buchanan, a junior?
A junior, yeah.
Like that is a ton of experience. That is a ton of accomplishment. And it allows guys like Killian Torrey and Jamarian Bateman to come off the bench and play much smaller and more tailored roles that usually befit freshmen rather than, okay, you're the starting 2 guard on a top 15 team. Like enjoy that trip to BYU or to West Lafayette or the Players era where you're playing, you know, one of the top teams in the country. Like that is, there are guys that can do it. And we've seen TJ's teams have really good freshmen, whether it's Tyrese Hunter, Tamin Lipsey, Milan Momcilovic, but it is a big ask for those guys. And when you have the experience and expectations that this Iowa State team does have, like throwing a freshman into the middle of that, like there's not a lot of patience from those older guys. Like you got to pull your weight immediately or, you know, things get rougher rather than easier as you go along. So like, and not to mention, like we've seen Nate be really good. Like TJ talked about how good he was against Cam Jones, against Marquette. We've talked, you know, ad nauseum about how much better his 3-point shooting got in the second half of the year. So like a good Nate Heisey is a really important piece to a better Iowa State men's basketball team this season.
Yeah, those flashes too. It felt like as promising as they were, as good as it was still just like a fraction of what Nate Heisey could bring based on what they were talking about him in terms of preseason expectations going into last year. Like that was the guy that unanimously everyone said most impressive newcomer, most impressive during the offseason, preseason. So if he can live up to that expectation, or if he can be that guy who's now being more vocal and can be sort of a leader component in the 6th year of college basketball, Nate Heisey unchained. I mean, what could that look like? That could go so well, bode so well for Iowa State.
And like Heisey's got attitude too. Like he is a trash talker up in your face. Like, and like there's nobody else like on, at least that we know. We'll see about the freshmen or the transfers, but like Taman's not afraid of anything, but he's not going to bark in guys' face or get in guys' face. Joshua is pretty mellow and even keel. Same for Milan Momcilovic. Where Nate Heisey will talk some trash, will get up into teams' face and have some attitude, have some grit. And I like that. And I think the way that Iowa State plays, having a guy like that, setting a tone like that, I think is hugely beneficial over the course of the season. Not to mention, it's fun to watch when guys are talking trash. I like been this close to swearing on this podcast in this segment here. I'm really being careful to keep saying trash or stuff.
Nate Heisey did get teched up that one time during Kansas State when he did the 3-point gesture that they thought was a gun. Yeah.
TJ had no problem. K-State, I think.
Yeah, at K-State.
And then we got to see TJ doing it for like 5 minutes to the official. Yeah, that was quite the moment. I think was it the Iowa game where Heisey was talking to Iowa fans and on courtside. So like, dude's not afraid to mix it up, which I as a leading proponent of team trash talk, I couldn't approve more.
It makes it more fun. He's in his 6th year. He doesn't care anymore. He's not holding back anymore. This is it. Last ride for Nate Heisey.
This is the Cyclone Insider Show from the Des Moines Register. I'm Travis Hines. He's Eugene Rapay. We are talking men's basketball after Iowa State's media day yesterday. The big news is the no news or the same news in that Tamin Lipsey's on track. That the what did they say, 4 to 6 week timetable is now 2 to 4 weeks. Two weeks later. I did not get the impression talking to anybody that there was a ton of concern there, that this was going to be a bigger deal than that initial 4 to 6 week time frame. Tamin was there. He was talking. He was answering questions. He has moved from like that full leg immobilizer that you see guys in sometimes to now just like a big knee brace. You know, it's more than like a neoprene sleeve, but it is not that immobilizer that he was in initially. So it seems like everything is moving in the right direction. And again, with him, I don't think the issue or the concern is the knee. It's the overall wear and tear on his body that he has, sustained now for seemingly like 21 years of his life.
Yeah, no concern across the board. It seemed like just another day, like, oh, Tamin's hurt, but he'll be fine. Like, he'll be okay. And he was there answering questions, posing for photos, doing videos and things, moving around Hilton. So he was in good shape. But yeah, I think with Tamin Lipsey, his health will obviously be a big component this season, and also just the playmakers beyond him and who they're leaning on for point guard minutes. I mean, right now, according just from talking to the team, it sounds like Killian Toure and Cade Kelderman are your big playmakers or your point guards, your primary point guards after Lipsey. So a good experience for Toure and Kelderman, who will probably get big minutes in the Creighton exhibitions and things like that. And I felt like, going back real quick, just with TJ talking about his players, he said don't count out Cade Kelderman. Like, we will see him this season. Like, he's not just the walk-on or the add-on anymore. I think he'll play some sort of role, and especially while Lipsey's dealing with just coming back from his knee injury, I think we might see a solid 10, 15 from Kelderman.
Yeah, I think that brings up a really interesting thing to talk about, which is like, what does their depth look like? If we're going to assume that starting five that we just mentioned, Lipsey, Heisey, Momcilovic, Jackson, Buchanan, like, what are the options coming off the bench? Like, those freshmen better be good, right? Or that depth is like, there's bodies, but there might not be production. If those freshmen, Killian Toure, Jamarian Bateman, Dominicus Plata, I think there's less urgency for Plata to be a contributor, although it sounds like he certainly has a chance to be, because they have Buchanan, because they have Eric Mulder from Pella. Where do you go? IUPUI or Indiana Fort Wayne? Or it's hard to keep all those.
Purdue Fort Wayne.
Purdue Fort Wayne. I feel like all those smaller Indiana schools are always changing their name to where going to need production from those backup wings, or like it's going to be you white knuckle it for the 8 minutes a game, that the core guys are not on the floor. And like everything I just said about Jefferson and Momcilovic, like I think they're going to do everything they can to play those. They're not going to stagger those guys' minutes. They're going to want them on the floor together as much as possible. So that puts a lot of not pressure, but it puts the onus on Killian Toure, Jamarian Bateman, Dominic Nelson, not a guy we heard a ton about from yesterday, to have something, to be able to provide some sort of burst to allow Iowa State to hold the line while those starters sit. And I'm of the opinion, and have been for a long time, that depth is completely overrated. Like, you don't need 9 and 10 guys. Like, there's a reason you have the guys starting that are starting. They're better. So having them on the floor as much as possible in a 40-game season where you're playing 40-minute games twice a week, like, we saw bodies break down at the end of last year. But I do, like, these guys are capable of playing full seasons with that workload, in my opinion. Like, you don't want to play 5 or 6, but I think 8 is a perfectly reasonable rotation. And it'll be interesting to see how TJ manages that year. And, like, for them, if they have – we keep going back to Heisey, like, this just unlocks unlimited potential, or at least I do.
Yeah.
I'm probably overstating it. But, like, it does allow those guys to be all upside, right? Like, assuming Taman is healthy, like, Toure, like, the role becomes so much more narrow, the things they're going to ask them to do, that it's easier to that. Like, that's a surprise to the upside. Like, if Toure can give them 8 points a game, Jamarian Bateman can give them 6 to 10 points a game. If Dominic Nelson can come out and be more efficient than we saw him at Utah Valley, like, it's all upside there rather than you have to produce or this team will not be as good. I think that's a small but important issue, or not issue, but development for Iowa State.
Yeah, I think going into yesterday, I already kind of mentally mapped out what I thought the starting 5 would look like, and I thought it would include Bateman or maybe Toure or whoever it may be. But now with Nate Heisey being one of the best performers in the preseason, that has completely just blown my depth chart apart. I'm curious to see how TJ handles it, because I feel like whenever you have a team that just has all this promising depth, you have the fans that are like, run 10, run 9, platoon swaps, whatever it may be. And that's just not, coaches are creatures of habit, and it feels like TJ is 8 seems to be his magic number, like 8, if we can get to a rotation of 8. And when you look at this, like, who they have, I'm like, oh, man, I would not want to figure out how to slice those minutes or what that would look like, because I imagine it will carve down to 8, and it would even tighten up more as we get deeper or closer to March. But right now, I mean, Iowa State's got some good options or good weapons to deal with, from the young guys to the transfers, and now the guys coming back with Nate Heisey included.
Yeah, and I will say, too, like, it is, again, the second week in October. This time last year, I remember talking excuse me, to people in and around the program saying, Kurt's going to start, Milan's going to come off the bench. That's what's going to be best for this team. That lasted exactly 1 game. That Milan came off the bench before they went back to the old way of doing things. So, like, things can change a lot between now and November 3rd. They can change more between now and December and January and February 3rd. So, as much as we are, like, praying at the altar of, Nate Heisey's reemergence here in the fall, things can change. But to me, if things are as they say they are, and like I said, like, usually TJ is pretty undersells things, that, like, the pieces are coming together in a way that is going to allow for a higher ceiling, for a more consistent, productive Iowa State basketball team on both ends of the floor. And, like, that's what you want in October, right? Like, you want options, you want a path forward, like, to figure out and to achieve. Like, if you come into October and November and you're like, man, I don't know who can play for us, how we can play, or what we're going to do if, plan A doesn't work, that's not a very fun place to be. We've seen Iowa State teams be like that, where you really have to talk yourself into a best case scenario. To me, a best case scenario here is pretty achievable. Like, there's not a lot they need to do more than what we've seen them do. If Nate Heisey can be who he was for a month and a half last year, that's great. If Joshua Jefferson can be 2 to 5% better than last year, like, you're talking about an All-American player. If Taman Lipsey can stay healthy and be Taman Lipsey, that's an all Big 12 player, a guy whose number goes up in the rafters. If Milan Momcilovic can be 5% better than he was last year, that's an all Big 12 player and a guy who's now back on NBA draft boards. And then, like, if you have all of that as a starting 5 of being that high quality, you can kind of figure out the depth part, or, like, not every team, no team can be perfect. So if Iowa State's, like, they're cursed to have a great starting five and a mediocre bench. Like, you take that, right? Like, you can't be a perfect team. You take that option of having 5 high-level players on the floor and trying to figure out the other 3. So I guess my point here is I think there is a reason for optimism because it's easier to chart the path to high-level play for Iowa State than it otherwise would have been if the reports are, Heisey's having the same fall as he had summer, which then it's is he a rotation player at that point? And now you're saying he's the most consistent guy. You can't take him off the floor. That's a huge turn, not only for Nate, but for the downstream effect there.
And just going off of all that, it sounds like the freshmen have been playing very well just throughout offseason and the fall. Like, guys
they
like
Jameer Bateman all summer.
Yeah. Yeah, Jameer Bateman and Killian Torrey, since they set foot off the plane, they've loved both of those guys. And Dom Plate is another guy with upside. He's still adjusting to the physicality and the tempo, but it seems like Toure and Bateman are 2 guys you can probably expect some big minutes from out of the gate. Xavier Mitchell, it sounds like he's probably leaning towards a redshirt year just based on my hunch and just from talking to him. He sounds like when a player says he's got to work on going to the weight room and bulking up and getting used to kind of the physicality, it sounds like he's probably redshirting. But yeah, right now, I mean, Killian Toure and Jameer Bateman, they've been building the hype train for both of them since July, and here we are, and now the train is still going full speed ahead.
Yeah, I mean, book your Final Four tickets now, people. We're all aboard the TJ Otzelberger Cyclones Express here. Again, just like we I was saying, we probably are overreacting to the Cincinnati game. We're definitely overreacting to one press conference in October here. But I think the overall theme on Iowa State basketball is I think the important thing is you can see what the path is, what the vision is from Otzelberger and his staff. And it does allow for some winning basketball games. But like you mentioned, they can play great basketball in February and still, come home to Hilton Coliseum with a losing record in that month. The Big 12 is going to be a monster this year. You can be a really, really good team. I think you could probably be a top 15 team in the country and finish 6th in the Big 12 this year. It is going to be a hugely difficult conference, which, what else is new?
Yeah, it feels like Houston, Tech, and BYU are probably that upper tier going into the season. And then you have Iowa State, probably Arizona, KU right behind. So that six already is just loaded.
When Kansas has a potential number 1 draft pick and is an afterthought to the front runners of the league, that tells you pretty distinctly how good the Big 12 is going to be. Hopefully you thought this show was pretty good because this is all we got. He is Eugene Rapay. I am Travis Hines. We both work for the Des Moines Register, and this has been the Cyclone Insider Show. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next time.